We are looking at another notable passage, a still small voice in First Kings chapter 19. And this particular one will be the last in our series. I'm not certain what we're going to pick up with next week just yet. I haven't made a final decision on that. But but this will be the last in this series for a bit. And each of these are just in and of themselves self-contained lessons that are very notable. A lot of them are ones we're familiar with. Some of them may not be as broadly familiar. This one comes right after one that is uh, very broadly familiar, the Elijah on and dealing with the prophets of Baal. And are we familiar with that story? I think we're pretty familiar with that story, right? What happened there with Elijah and the prophets of Baal? What's the cliff notes for it?
No fire, water, fire.
That's the very shortened version of it. Indeed.
No false idol, real God.
Yeah, so, it was 400 of them versus Elijah. Not really, it was 400 of them versus God. And God demonstrated who the true God was. But in that story, it's important to note before getting here how powerful, how confident Elijah was. He's mocking in his tone. Where is your God gone on a far journey? Maybe he's sleeping. Yell a little louder. He's very confident. And here, when we pick up in our story here, we see a very different disposition. So let's begin reading at verse number 1 of 1 Kings 19. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow, about this time. And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life, and came to Beersheba, and that which belonged to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for himself that he might die, and said, It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. So we see he's threatened, but he's threatened after a great big triumph. Now, what normally happens when you're victorious? In a sporting connotation, your team wins a great victory. For the next match, what normally happens?
You celebrate.
You celebrate. Then how do you feel about the next match?
You want to go get them.
Yeah, you're ready, right? You're not lacking confidence. Your confidence has been built. Is this all about? Well, what happens here? What are we seeing here? Yes.
Well, it seems that we're seeing him depressed because of the fact that Jezebel is after him. But where he says, It is enough. Now, O Lord, take my life, for I am not better than my fathers. That could be taken, though, as not straight depression, but I've done enough and ready to die like my fathers. Meaning, I'm assuming he's meaning that all of his forefathers, Abraham and all of them. So, is it total depression? Or is it he'd rather go be with God?
See,
A little of both.
I like that question, because the normal thing we look at is after all of this, Jezebel comes to him and says, well, or sends message to him saying, I'm going to kill you. And you just wonder, why would that get him down? Really? Why would that be a thing at all? And this is not all about Jezebel. Now, she's the catalyst to all of this, but it's not all about her, as you're pointing out. So there seems to be something more there, and we're going to explore that as we go along.
Does verse 3 give an insight to his mental situation?
Well, it definitely does, and that's what usually leads everyone to conclude that he's just afraid, he's just running out of fear. And so there's something more than that. So when he saw that, he arose and went for his life and came to Beersheba, which belonged to Judah, and left his servant there. The Bible's indicating he's definitely reacting to what she said. But as we go along, we're going to see there's a lot more to it. But what we're seeing is an element of his humanity. And that's important because Elijah's one of the great prophets, right? He's powerful. He's Superman. No, he's just a man. And it's interesting when the Bible gives us these sort of insights that remind us that these greats are still just people. We see his humanity. But notice also, this is a very interesting point in verse 3. And he left his servant there, but he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. So he goes off on his own. Why?
I think it's to protect his servant. So if they're going to kill me, one, the fact that he was afraid and ran, if somebody's coming to kill you, you don't just stand there and let them kill you. Even though he has God on his side, but do you call on God for yourself? His demonstration was to prove the power of God. God's not at Elijah's beck and call for his own good. Yet we see in the next couple of verses that God does things for him. So I'm still conflicted about what was exactly in his mind.
No, it's a good question, and I agreeing with where your line of thought is going. So we see him react to her threat. He runs, the Bible says, for his life. Now he leaves his servant because, of course, he's going to protect him. But he could also do that by calling on God. He could do that by calling on God. And he does it. And we get insight on that in the very next verse, right? We see his mindset. It's enough.
I have a question, though.
Yes.
Is he directing God what to do, or is God directing him what to do? God told him to go do the thing with the altars and stuff. So I'm questioning what we think his relationship with God is, that he can call on God to do anything he wants. I think Elijah only does what the Lord tells him to do. Doesn't rely on him.
I don't know that he wouldn't pray of his own volition. I would assume, and that's what I'm saying, he could call on the Lord, not in the sense of, I'm going to call down fire like he just did, because of course he's following God's command there. But there's nothing to say that he couldn't say, God help me.
Like David did it all the time.
God help us. So, but we see the insight. Again, his idea is, it's done. I'm done. So it all makes sense when you see that. The only question is, why? Why is he so determined about that? And let's continue on. So he's definitely despairing. I do want to point out James 5:6 17. Elias was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth brought forth her fruit. That happens earlier. And so just James calls out the fact that he's a man subject to like passions as we are. And again, that connection there with someone that's held up so great. I'm not gonna read 1 Corinthians 10. I'll keep going. So 1 Kings 19, verse number 5. And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him, and said unto him, Arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baken on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid him down again. And the angel of the Lord came again the second time, and touched him, and said, Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee. And he arose and did eat and drink, and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mount of God. What just happened?
Magic food?
He's fed. What does that imply about his state? Yes.
He was probably feeling pretty exhausted from all that he'd gone through.
See, now we're getting a little bit of insight into what's going on. It's not just Jezebel. He reacted to Jezebel. But the man is tired. And God tends to him. He's hungry and he's tired. And what happens when you're hungry and tired? Do you make the best decisions? Okay, maybe it's just me. I don't make the best decisions. I think you all make all the best decisions when you're hungry and tired. Me, I make bad decisions because my thinking is compromised during that time. I'm not at my sharpest. And so I do believe what we're seeing is all being described to let us know what his state is, especially what we see by the end of this. So he's exhausted, he's tired, but God tends to his needs. Yes.
Do you get that when the angel cooked for him, looks like maybe twice, cooked for him and laid food and drink out for him? And then he says he went on the strength of that food 40 days.
Mm-hmm.
Were you getting that food that he was given lasted him 40 days without eating the rest of the time?
I don't know. We know it's possible. We see Jesus didn't eat for 40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah.
We know if that was, and he says it went on the strength of that food for 40 days. So that's what I would suppose. Whether or not there was not another bite to eat, and this is just saying that food specifically sustained him for the journey, strengthened him for the journey. I don't know. I can't say with certainty.
Maybe packed him some lunches to take with him.
Yeah, maybe put some things in his pockets. But that food sustained him. We know that.
Yeah.
I would, take it at its surface reading if you were to ask me, but it's still an opinion because I don't think it bars, unlike in this case of Jesus where we know he did not eat for 40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah.
This doesn't necessarily say that
You're right.
exactly, but I do believe it's implying and leaning more toward that. But obviously if we needed to know that, we would know. But God gave him rest. Right? He's there, he ate, and what did he do?
Slept some more.
He slept some more. God allowed him to rest. He says, it's enough. That it's enough isn't just a depression, it's a fatigue. And God gives him food and allows him to rest. He sends his angel to give him more food and says, now you go make the journey to Horeb. So God's provided for his needs. God knew the journey that he was going to have to take. In Psalm 103, verse 13, like as a father pitieth his children, so the Lord pitieth them that fear him. For he knoweth our frame, he remembereth that we are dust. God knows how we're built. He knows how we're made. And sometimes in our despair, we can forget that. We act like God doesn't know the frailty of man. If we hunger, we're wondering, well, did God forget us? But the Bible says he knows what it is that we need. And so here we're seeing a picture of that as he provides for Elijah. Matthew 11:28. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I want to point out, when God is talking about rest, there's the final rest. But the other rest, he's talking about, I'm going to give you rest. He's not talking about you taking a rest. It's a different idea. I'm going to provide it. That means I'm going to decide when it's time to rest. So already, if you're kind of getting my drift here, yes.
Is that a lot of times we've seen our elder members that are really old and saying, why hasn't God taken me? And we've, said there must be a reason. God will take you when it's time. Is that sort of the same thing you're talking about right there?
Yeah, I like when you understand. Because I know I'm saying it in a bit of a confusing way. We haven't gotten to the whole thing, but I do want to just point out it is showing some things. So already we can start to conclude what Elijah says about it's enough.
And God said, no, it's not.
It's not for him to decide. That's already out of place, right? Now we can understand it. Look at everything he's gone through. And now we get a glimpse of the fact that he's exhausted, he's tired, he's hungry, he's tired. He's done this and now somebody's coming to kill him. Oh, we can completely relate to this, right? He's discouraged, he's tired, he's despairing. So he pronounces, it's enough. But we haven't gotten to the end of the lesson, but we already know that is not his place to decide. Absolutely not. Yes.
So I took a few minutes to look at the scriptures before chapter 19.
Mm-hmm.
And Elijah did so much dealing with the prophets of Baal and slaughtering 450 of those false prophets. It is tiring.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and then the end of the verse says that then the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and outran Ahab and Jezreel. Man, if you have done that much exercise, you're bound to be tired.
Yeah. Indeed.
Isn't he old at this time?
Yeah.
I don't remember his age.
He's older. We're about 850, approximately 850 BC. Of course, none of these dates mean a whole lot, but just approximate range. And he's about to be replaced in another, but some would say maybe it's another 5 years, 10 years. Anyway, spoiler for the story. Does he die here or does he not? You gotta wait till the end of the story. But yeah, like I said, leading up to it, you have to understand what he's done leading up to this. And his attitude is not one of intended disrespect. Again, he's done what God has commanded, and he's thinking, now's a good time, as good a time as any. They've been taken care of. She wants me dead. I don't want to die in her hands, but it's time. It's time to go be with God. That's how he's feeling. In verse number 9, and he came thither unto a cave and lodged there, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said unto him, What doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And even only I am left, and they seek my life to take it away. So again, some insight. He feels alone. But remember, he had someone with him. He left the one person that was with him. He wasn't alone. By choice, he's alone. But he's feeling, it doesn't matter. He's feeling alone in this work. They've killed prophets. They're discarded all that God would have them to do as God's chosen people. And he is discouraged. He's been working. He's saying diligently for the Lord. Again, what we see is despair, but we see a great deal of fatigue. And even though God has nourished him, we know that there's not just physical fatigue, there's mental fatigue. We are getting to see truly the humanity of this great prophet. And that's a healthy thing for us. I believe there's a reason that God gives us these sort of glimpses, so we don't forget. These are men. Brother Tharp.
I try to imagine what that would be today. And I'm going to use Brad as the example here. Brad wakes up, finds out every church building in America has been burned down. All the rest of us have been killed. And America's turned against God. And Brad thinks, well, it's done. And then God says, no, Brad, you have to keep going. What are your thoughts?
Can I be Brad's servant?
Yes, you can.
Leave somewhere?
No, you were killed.
Your story is very morbid.
But I'm saying that's what he's facing. They killed all the other prophets.
No, it's...
and priests. They tore down the temple and the altar. I think he thinks Israel's done with God, even though God shows that he's powerful.
That's what he's saying right here. It's just me left.
Yeah.
And now what does he want? If it's just him left, what does he want?
He wants to go rest too with his fathers.
He wants out. He wants there to be no one left. Again, there's a great deal of despair with them. We see God meeting him in the cave and asking him this question, what doest thou here? And this is a question that's asked for what reason? What's intended by this? He wants Elijah to do something.
It's sort of like when he talks to Adam and Eve in the garden. He knows the answers.
He wants them to do some soul searching. What are you doing here? We get a little bit more insight into that as it goes on, but it's interesting. Elijah is focused on the burden that he's borne. God, I've done this and this and this and this for you. God knows that because you did it all by the power of God, by the instruction of God. Again, this man is tired, and he felt alone. In Genesis 3:9, as you pointed out, he asked a similar question. So since Matt already spoiled that, I won't read that. And we're going to keep going in this for the sake of time. So now we get to verse 11. And he said, Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and break in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. And it was so, when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle, and went out and stood in the entering in of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him, and said, What doest thou here, Elijah? So we see this wind, this earthquake, and the fire. Why that imagery?
Power?
Power. All of those things are forces of nature. They represent great power. Really great power. So if we think of God and we think of this wind that's tearing down mountains, we might think that's God there. That's the power of God. And if we see a earthquake, the sound and the rumbling and everything that goes along with an earthquake, that's the power of God. Fire, the consumption, the destruction, sometimes just unquenchable. And we think that's the power of God. Everything except this still quiet voice. This still small voice is not what you would associate with God. When God spoke, when Jesus was baptized, was that a still small voice?
No.
No. No, we don't think of God in that way. And there's a lesson being taught here. Again, what Elijah was focused upon was he's alone. His numbers. Greatness, right? Everybody's left you. That's what he's focused upon. And so God shows him the contrast between these great things and this small thing. That's God, right there. And there's a lesson, of course, to be learned there. And the voice asks him, What doest thou here, Elijah? Same question again. What are you doing here? What was that? Same answer.
Same answer too.
Let's see. In Zechariah 4, verse number 6. Then he answered and spake unto me, saying, This is the word of the Lord unto Zerubbabel, saying, Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord of hosts. God is not going to be confined by the natural things that we see, the physical things that we see. And again, it's just like it's easy to forget men like Elijah aren't supermen. They're men acting on the authority of God and accessing the power of God. And God, we forget, is not confined to this universe, nor are his ways confined to the ways of our thinking. So while Elijah's wondering, where is everybody? Who would be responsible for that? Why did Elijah live through the prophets of Baal?
God protected him.
God protected him. What about all those other prophets? He said all the other ones were slain.
Not so much.
Whose fault is that?
God will protect who he wants to protect and not protect who.
Oh, come on, think like Elijah thought. It's God's fault. He protected him, he could have protected them as well. He's alone now. I'm no better than any of the rest of them. It's enough. Time for me to go be with you. This is again a man in despair. So what do you suppose is the reason for the question? What is it that God wants Elijah conclude by that question? We know he's asking the question for Elijah's sake, right? What is it that he wants him to conclude?
He wants.
Still has,
Yeah, go
still
ahead.
has more to do, a job to do.
Yeah, what are you doing here?
Mhm.
That's the question he's asking. What are you doing here? And he needs him to really think about that question.
God's telling him, I'm not done with you yet.
I'm not done with you yet. Strong lesson for us, right?
It's really interesting that he shows probably at that time of the world the three most powerful things in nature. You know, with the exception of maybe like a hurricane or tornado. But a great wind, that could have been a hurricane, tornado,
Well,
an
it's
earthquake.
knocking rocks down, mountains down, as the Bible describes it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty great wind.
He's showing all this huge power, and I think Elijah knows that this is God doing this, and then he talks to him, you know, and at some point Elijah's got to come back to the idea that God has more work for me, and it's not me that gets to say I'm done.
Do you think there's anything to the still quiet voice versus the loud booming voice? Yes.
A thought just came to mind. The wind, the earthquake, the fire, and is that a message for Californians? And over the years, I hear I'm getting out of here, you know. And then there's a lot of news about California losing a lot of people. But then there are still a lot of people here.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah, I like it here. I don't know when earthquakes are coming. I don't want to sit waiting for a hurricane. I like it this way. We just trust in God, rock and roll, and then move on.
And the sad part are those believers that think that there is no hope for California.
Well, you know, I've been hearing California's going to slide into the ocean since I was a child. So, yes.
I think that the gentle voice is a juxtaposition to I have all this power, yet I can still whisper and you hear it.
Yes.
So I think that there is, because he could have had the booming voice from on top of the mountain, he could have done all that, but just a gentle voice to him, and maybe it consoled him too.
That's on top of it, what I wanted to get out of this. As we talked about, the contrast between all of these other things and the small, still voice is definitely being made. But I would also assert, if you look at everything else there, what did Elijah need?
Consoling.
He needed consolation. And what's more consoling? The loud voice or
A gentle voice.
the gentle voice? And he's reasoning with him. He's caring for him. That's what we're seeing here. We're seeing God actually taking care of him. Brother Young.
When you ask what Elijah needs, I think Elijah needs the same message God gave to Jonah. You know, I think I see the similarity there. Jonah won't run away, and same thing. Elijah come to the state.
Yeah, but Elijah's not doing anything in defiance here.
No,
That is a big contrast, but I do agree with you, and he does basically give him the same, what we're about to see in the very next section here, is he basically does give him the same thing, but according to his needs. Now, Jonah said no to God. And so Jonah's lesson was, look, and Jonah may have thought he had really good reason in his heart to say no to God, but he was saying no to God. What we see with Elijah is him feeling like I've completed this service. And God is now going to instruct him and is instructing him. Look, I'm the one who's going to determine that. If I still have use for you, you keep going. Same ultimate idea. This is not for you to decide, but very, very different circumstances, yes.
And I mean, we haven't got to the next verse yet, but he also consoles him in that he says, go set up the king here, and a prophet for you. In other words, he's telling him, just because everything that happened doesn't mean I'm going away. I'm setting up a whole new structure.
He hasn't said that.
I said in the next verse. But well, that's part of the consolation to him is that there's still a plan.
Again, exactly it. So as we're following the story, I just want to point out he's been taking care of him the whole time. That's been his demeanor toward him. He's caring for him. In his fatigue, mental, physical, in his loneliness, in his despair, he's caring for him all along, Brother Young.
You remember recently there is a phrase that was coined, quiet resignation. That people are not quitting, but they exercise quiet resignation.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to work, but they don't want to work.
Yeah, I remember that. I thought it was the dumbest phrase I've ever heard in my life. I do remember that. We promoted it quite a bit. Now, I understood what was going on. You know, watching the news was quite annoying during that talk. Michael.
And God's showing him his power, you know, the wind, the fire, the earthquake, and how much power there is. And then this soft voice comes out. And he's giving him an example of the power and the softness, both sides of him.
Yeah, and the Bible says he wasn't in the wind, he wasn't in the fire, he wasn't in the earthquake. He's the voice. He's all of that. God is power, God is gentleness, he's caring, he's nurturing. All of that based upon what we need. But Elijah was concerned about what he thought he needed. This is time.
We never make that mistake of thinking we know what God needs.
If we didn't, we wouldn't be looking at this lesson. There's a reason this is here. I mean, it is it's a strong lesson even for us. In verses 14 through 17, and he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even only I, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. So he gives the same answer. He's consistent. I've done all of these things, and now here I am. They're ready to take away my life. And verse 15, and the Lord said unto him, Go, return on thy way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria, and Jehu the son of Nimshi shall thou anoint to be king over Israel, and Elisha the son of Shaphat of Abel Meholah shalt thou anoint to be the prophet in thy room. And it shall come to pass that him that escapeth the sword of Hazael shall Jehu slay, and him that escapeth the sword from Jehu shall Elisha slay. So God listened to the exact same statement that he had to make. This is his, look, it's just me. I've done all of these things, and I'm the only one left. And interestingly enough, God says, okay, it's enough of that. He's taking care of them, right? Here's some food. You can sleep. Here's some more food. Now go over here, consult with God. I'm going to show you something. He He demonstrates who God is. He shows them the power of God. He's consoling to them. And then he says, it's time to get back to work. That was the end result. No, I know what you are talking about, what you want, it's enough. But this is where you're wrong. You don't decide when it's enough. You keep going. So I find it interesting that after all of that, he takes care of all of his needs, and he even preps them mentally. He tells them, here are the people I'm going to appoint. I'm even going to give you somebody who is going to be your successor. What does that mean? It means you got some training to do. You've got some work to do.
What I would hear is, I get to retire soon.
He wants to retire right now.
I know, but
It's time for boot camp.
But indeed, and so God's giving him the plan. He's letting him know, look, all that you see Israel doing and all these problems that you're calling out, don't worry. I've got the plan. Everything's going to happen exactly as I will it. That's what he's letting them know. You think Israel's done something. You think the prophets have been slain. You think there's nobody left who cares. And we haven't gotten to the final verse, of course, but here he's telling them, I've got a plan. You keep executing the plan. What has he done up until now? What has Elijah done up until now?
what the Lord told him to do?
What the Lord, he's acted according to the plan. God tells him to do something, he's done it. Isn't that what his whole statement was? Look, God, I've been very jealous for you. I've done this, this, and this. I've done what you wanted. And what is God's response? Okay, now go. Keep doing what I want. Here's what's going to happen. Things don't happen according to our time frame. God said, look, judgment's going to come. I'm going to take care of these matters, and here's how I'm going to take care of them. You just keep acting in the role of the prophet until I say you're done. Yes.
That's the lesson we can take from this whole thing. We just keep doing what God tells us to do. No matter what we see in the world happening, no matter what happens around us, we just keep doing what God tells us to do.
That is, it is a strong message, yes.
Well, people credit this saying to Einstein. Keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. That is insanity. So I guess Elijah is the one who coined the sentence. God, you keep telling me to do the same thing and expect a different result, you know.
Yeah, that's according to Einstein's thoughts, but you know, Elijah just needs to keep doing the same thing and not expect a different result, because this is not a change in plan. God knows all of this was going to happen. In God's providence, this is not a problem. The problem is Elijah's sight is limited. This is our problem. We don't get to see the whole picture. We live our, however many years we're going to live on this earth, and then we die. And we have seen a small portion of the picture in our lifetimes. And we've played a part during that. But we don't get to see everything. Again, it gets back to trusting in God, brother. Yeah.
But it's a good thing that we have the Old Testament. We can use this as a school teacher. That we learn the relentless provocation, rejection of Israel, of God, will drive a human or any human mad. And yet God's love for them was so great that he never ceased to go after them.
Yes, I'm going to come right back to that as we close. Definitely want to close on that idea. God provided Elijah a successor. Some would say that they walked with each other anywhere between 5 to 10 years. So this wasn't, hey, you got it now. I'm going to the beach. There was work to be done. That's just an estimate. We don't know, but there's not a lot of indicators of time, but there is a couple indicators of time for the stories that happened subsequently. Yes.
Are you going to read 18? I didn't
Yes.
remember. Okay, you are.
Yeah. So I'm going to. We know this one. Do not grow weary in well doing, and continue to preach the word. There's a reason I put those there, and we'll just touch upon that in closing. So, getting to the final verse, yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth which hath not kissed him. So, as I mentioned, Elijah's view is limited. God had preserved a remnant, and the faithful are never truly alone is a message that God had for Elijah. So after telling him the plan, he lets him know your view, your perspective is completely wrong.
More consolation, too.
It is consolation.
You're not alone.
You're wrong.
Yeah.
You are wrong in what you think there's no one left. And there are many left. You're wrong. And that should be consolation. Again, how do we often feel? We look at the state of the church today, and I can look at the state of the church over 30 years ago. Some of you can look at the state of the church even longer.
It's like 10% of what it used to be, it seems.
And what do? If we're not careful, we despair. There's nothing we can do to stop this. There's nothing we can do to turn it around. Our pews aren't going to fill up anymore. That is how we feel. Yes.
I was going to say, it's up to us to try and change and turn that around and bring people.
Yeah, to a degree. It's up to us to keep going.
Yeah.
Just like we did 30 years ago, 50 years ago, we need to keep going. Now, of course, our bodies change and all of that. I understand that. You know what I'm talking about, though. From a mindset standpoint, we have to keep going. We have to know it's in God's hands. We deliver the word. God will provide the increase. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean his supporters aren't there.
Yeah, I mean, people have been proclaiming God's gone. I mean, I think it was late 60s, early 70s when Time magazine said God is dead on their cover. We didn't give up then. We shouldn't give up now. God's saying, look, you thought there's at least 7,000. Yes, that's a much smaller number than the number of people in Israel, which was probably over 1 million at least back then. So yeah, even when we despair, God still has people that are faithful to him. And that should bolster us.
Indeed. He's so this lesson does remind us that even in our work and our faith in God and our knowledge of his word, people can grow tired. Good men and women of God can grow tired. They can despair at times. Anyone can, as Brother Young pointed out, with all of this that's going on, it would make sense that despair might set in. And so in order to combat that, we have stories like this. We have reminders that, look, it's far broader than what we can see, what we can tell. So we need to keep going. How long? Until God is no longer ready to use us. Elijah's asking to die. Did he ever die? Technically, no.
Technically, yes.
Technically, no. The Bible says God took him.
But that could be interpreted as took his spirit, his body's dead.
Did Enoch die?
Did not see death because his spirit may have been taken out of his body before his body died. That's a very technical.
I said technically.
I know. It's a very technical thing.
We're going to bring class to a yes.
And the irony is that I read it a little bit. There is a guy, sound like him, his name, and he wants to do twice as much. Isn't that a miracle itself?
Indeed. God sent him a successor. But again, I just want to point out again that, just in closing, that this lesson is there's a broad lesson on God taking care of people and his people and the like. But also don't miss the lesson that people hard workers for God, can grow tired, can grow to despair. We need to encourage one another constantly so that we don't allow our brothers and sisters to grow into despair. This can happen. If it could happen to someone like Elijah, who had direct access to God, and with all the great things that he did, obviously it could happen to us. So that's the other lesson in this. Thank you for your attention. We're going to continue on with our song.